Have you ever wondered about that massive red country that dominated world maps for most of the 20th century? What was the Soviet Union, really? How did it rise? What was life like inside? And why did it all come crashing down? Today, we're going to unravel the entire history of the Soviet Union, from the revolution that started it all to the day the red flag was lowered for the last time. It's a story of ideology, power, epic struggles, and profound human drama. So, buckle up, because we're diving into a 70-year saga that changed the world forever. It all begins in the chaos of World War I. The Russian Empire, led by Tsar Nicholas II, was on the brink of collapse. The people were starving, the war was a disaster, and discontent was boiling over. In February 1917, a revolution toppled the Tsar. But the new government couldn't solve the country's problems. This created an opening for a radical group of revolutionaries called the Bolsheviks, led by a man named Vladimir Lenin. With powerful slogans like peace, land, and bread, they promised a new world, a communist utopia where workers would rule. In October 1917, they seized power in a swift and decisive coup. The Russian Civil War erupted almost immediately. A brutal conflict between the Bolsheviks' Red Army and the anti-communist White Army. After years of devastating fighting, the Red Army emerged victorious. In 1922, Lenin officially established the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or the USSR. Lenin's health was failing, and after his death in 1924, a power struggle began. Out of this emerged one of the most infamous figures in history, Stalin. Stalin was ruthless, cunning, and obsessed with absolute control. He sidelined his rivals, including the brilliant theorist Leon Trotsky. And by the late 1920s, he was the undisputed dictator of the Soviet Union. His rule would define the next 3 decades. Stalin launched a program of forced industrialization, aiming to turn the agrarian nation into an industrial powerhouse overnight. Peasants were forced onto collective farms, a policy that led to resistance, chaos, and a horrific famine, especially in Ukraine, known as the Holodomor, which killed millions, while new factories, dams, and cities were built at a staggering pace. The human cost was immense. Alongside this economic upheaval came an era of unimaginable political terror. In the mid-1930s, Stalin unleashed the Great Purge. Anyone suspected of disloyalty, from old Bolshevik leaders and military officers to intellectuals, artists, and ordinary citizens, was arrested. Millions were executed or sent to the Gulag, a vast network of brutal forced labor camps scattered across Siberia and the Arctic. Fear permeated every aspect of Soviet society. People were encouraged to inform on their neighbors, friends, and even family. Stalin cultivated a powerful cult of personality, with his portrait displayed everywhere. He was portrayed as the wise, fatherly leader, even as his secret police were tearing the country apart. This was the dark heart of Stalinism, rapid modernization built on a foundation of terror and absolute power. Then, the world was plunged into its Second Great War. Initially, Stalin signed a non-aggression pact with Nazi Germany, shocking the world. This pact allowed them to divide Poland between them. But in June 1941, Hitler betrayed Stalin and launched a massive surprise invasion of the Soviet Union, known as Operation Barbarossa. The initial assault was devastating. The German army pushed deep into Soviet territory, reaching the outskirts of Moscow. The war on the Eastern Front was fought with unparalleled brutality. Cities like Leningrad endured a horrific siege that lasted nearly 900 days, causing over 1 million civilian deaths. But the tide began to turn at the Battle of Stalingrad. After months of ferocious street-to-street fighting, the Soviet Red Army encircled and destroyed the German Sixth Army. It was a monumental victory and a turning point in World War II. The Red Army then began its long, bloody march west, pushing the Germans back all the way to Berlin. The Soviet Union paid an unimaginable price, with an estimated 27 million casualties, more than any other nation. But its sacrifice was crucial to the Allied victory. With the end of World War II, the world was split in two, the Soviet Union and the United States, emerged as the two global superpowers, each with competing ideologies, communism versus capitalism. This marked the beginning of the Cold War. An Iron Curtain, as Winston Churchill famously called it, descended across Europe, dividing the continent. The East, including countries like Poland, East Germany, and Hungary, fell under Soviet influence, becoming satellite states. The Cold War wasn't a direct hot war between the superpowers, but a tense standoff fought through proxy wars, an arms race, and a space race. The world held its breath during crises like the Berlin blockade and, most terrifyingly, the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, when the US and USSR came to the brink of nuclear war. Meanwhile, inside the Soviet Union, Stalin died in 1953. His successor, Nikita Khrushchev, shocked the world by denouncing Stalin's crimes in a secret speech. This led to a period known as the Thaw, with a slight relaxation of censorship and the release of some political prisoners. The Soviet Union even seemed to be winning the space race, launching Sputnik, the first satellite, and sending Yuri Gagarin, the first man, into orbit. But the fundamental nature of the Soviet system remained. Khrushchev's reforms were limited, and when Hungary tried to break away from Soviet control in 1956, their revolution was brutally crushed. In 1964, Khrushchev was ousted and replaced by the more conservative Leonid Brezhnev. His era is often called the period of stagnation. The economy, which had grown rapidly under Stalin, began to slow down. The centralized planning system became inefficient and corrupt. While the military remained powerful, living standards for ordinary people stagnated. There were long lines for basic goods, and a thriving black market emerged for Western products like jeans and records. Despite the official propaganda of a happy socialist society, a deep sense of cynicism and apathy set in. The state continued to suppress dissent, persecuting writers, artists, and activists who dared to speak out. The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979 became their own Vietnam, a costly and demoralizing war that drained resources and morale. By the early 1980s, the Soviet Union was a superpower in decline, crumbling from within. In 1985, a younger, more dynamic leader came to power, Mikhail Gorbachev. He knew the system was broken and needed radical reform. He introduced two key policies: glasnost, meaning openness, which allowed for more freedom of speech and press, and perestroika, meaning restructuring, which aimed to reform the stagnant economy. For the first time in decades, people could openly criticize the government. The dark secrets of Soviet history, like the Gulag and the famines, were exposed. But these reforms had unintended consequences. Glasnost unleashed long-suppressed nationalist sentiments in the various republics that made up the U.S. Perestroika failed to fix the economy and, in some ways, made things worse. The people now had the freedom to complain, and they had a lot to complain about. Protests for independence erupted across the Soviet Union, from the Baltic states of Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, to the Caucasus region. The satellite states in Eastern Europe saw their chance, and in 1989, the Berlin Wall fell, a powerful symbol that the end was near. The final act came swiftly. In August 1991, hardline communists, terrified of Gorbachev's reforms and the country's disintegration, launched a coup to seize power. But the people, having tasted freedom, were not willing to go back. Huge crowds, led by the charismatic Russian President Boris Yeltsin, defied the tanks in Moscow. The coup collapsed in just 3 days. This event shattered the remaining authority of the Communist Party and Gorbachev himself. One by one, the Soviet republics declared their independence. On Christmas Day, 1991, Mikhail Gorbachev resigned as president of a country that no longer existed. The red Soviet flag with its hammer and sickle was lowered from the Kremlin for the last time, and the new Russian tricolor was raised in its place. The Soviet Union was officially dissolved, and just like that, a 70-year experiment in communism came to an end. The history of the Soviet Union is a complex and often tragic story. It's a tale of revolutionary ideals, brutal tyranny, incredible sacrifice, and the enduring human desire for freedom. It shaped the 20th century, and its legacy continues to influence our world today. What do you think was the most significant moment in Soviet history? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, And if you found this journey through history interesting, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more deep dives into the past. See you next time.